What would you do if the man you had just married, the one who promised you a life of luxury and security, was hiding a terrifying secret that shattered your entire world? This is the story of a woman who believed she had found the perfect life only to learn the truth about the man she loved. What happens when trust is broken and the person you trusted the most turns out to be a danger in disguise? The answer will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and deception. In just a few hours after their wedding, a woman, filled with excitement for her new life, faced a brutal truth. The man she married, who had kept so much hidden, revealed a secret so shocking that it would change her life forever. What could have seemed like the beginning of a perfect life quickly turned into a nightmare, where nothing was as it seemed. The stakes were higher than ever as her discovery unraveled the fabric of their marriage, and the price for this revelation was more than she could have ever imagined. But what would she do when she learned the truth? Would she fight for survival? Would she even be able to escape the grip of the man she thought she knew? The horrifying answer to these questions would reveal the darkness hidden within the walls of their marriage, forever altering the course of their lives, and the lives of those around them. Imagine yourself in her shoes. What would you do if the person you trusted turned out to be hiding a secret so dangerous? Could you confront them, or would you run? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's unravel this chilling tale together. Before we go deeper into the story, we welcome you to our channel, True Crime Zone HQ. Thank you to all our viewers and a special shout out to our subscribers for your continued support. Together, we strive to improve and bring you daily updates on both told and untold true crime stories. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Behind the towering gates of a sprawling estate, a tale of deception was unfolding. The mansion, with its grand marble floors and gilded chandeliers, was nothing short of magnificent. Velvet drapes cascaded from the windows, their rich fabric catching the soft glow of the lights. But behind the beauty and elegance, something more disturbing simmered beneath the surface. Every inch of the estate seemed to whisper a secret, an unspoken truth that no one dared to acknowledge. As Sophia entered the mansion, the opulence that surrounded her felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. The lavish decorations, the fine art adorning the walls, and the pristine furniture all seemed to tell a story of wealth and power. Yet, the mansion itself felt cold, as if it were merely a shell, an outward display of grandeur hiding something far more unsettling inside. The silence was almost oppressive, as though the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for something inevitable to happen. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the grand hallway, reverberating in the empty space. It was a silence that made her feel more alone than she had ever felt before. The estate, which should have felt like a sanctuary, now seemed like a labyrinth of secrets, each hallway, each room, each door concealing another layer of mystery that she couldn't yet understand. Despite the grandeur of the mansion, there was an undeniable unease in the air. The silence within the walls wasn't comforting, it was heavy, almost suffocating. The kind of silence that made you question whether you were truly alone, or if something was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was a silence that kept you on edge, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. Inside, wealth and power should have been enough to make anyone feel safe, secure. But here, those same things felt like masks, disguises for something far more dangerous. The vast estate that promised comfort instead exuded a coldness that no amount of gold or silk could hide. The lavish surroundings, while beautiful, could not protect Sophia from the unsettling truth that her life was about to take a terrifying turn. As she moved through the house, she could feel it, an invisible weight in the air. The estate, though stunning, was like a trap, and she had walked right into it. The heavy curtains blocked out the sunlight, leaving the mansion bathed in an eerie half-light that only added to the disquiet in her chest. Every turn she made, every shadow she passed, felt like a reminder that nothing here was as it seemed. This was a house built on secrets, a place where appearances meant everything, and the truth was a luxury few could afford. As she moved through the halls, the tension seemed to grow, thickening with every step she took. This was no longer just a home, it was a place where betrayal and danger festered in the dark corners, hidden behind the perfect facades that everyone saw. Sophia was about to find out just how deep those secrets ran, and how costly it would be to uncover them. Sophia was young, full of life, and filled with an infectious optimism. She was a woman who had fought her way up from humble beginnings, determined to build a life that reflected her ambition. And when she met Marcus Blackwood, the powerful and wealthy man who seemed to have it all, it felt like her dreams were finally within reach. He was everything she thought she needed, charming, attentive, and seemingly devoted. The wealth and status he offered only added to the allure. He made her feel special, adored, and cherished, something she had always longed for after years of struggle. Sophia believed she had found her happily ever after, the fairy tale she'd always imagined. Together, they would create a life of luxury, surrounded by everything they could ever want. But what Sophia didn't know was that the life she had entered was far from the dream she imagined. Beneath the glamour, something was waiting, something she couldn't yet comprehend. And it was about to surface, pulling her into a world of unimaginable darkness. The truth was, she had unknowingly entered into a dangerous game, one where love and trust were not the rules. Sophia's reality, built on the foundation of trust and love, was about to be shattered by a single discovery, a truth that, once revealed, would change the course of her life forever. Marcus Blackwood's name was spoken in whispers, his presence enough to command attention and fear. He was the head of a criminal empire that spanned continents, a man whose influence and wealth reached far beyond the average person's imagination. To the public, Marcus was a well-mannered businessman, the epitome of sophistication. He graced high society events with a smile, shaking hands with the most powerful people in the world. His wealth was undeniable, his power unchallenged. But Marcus was not a man who was easily understood. He had mastered the art of deception, presenting a public face that hid his true nature. Beneath the tailored suits and the quiet, calculated charm, he harbored a secret that no one, not even his closest associates, could ever guess. It wasn't the kind of secret that could be ignored. It was a truth so disturbing that its discovery would not only destroy him but everything around him. Marcus had everything: power, wealth, and fear. But what he didn't have was the one thing that mattered most: a life built on trust. And it was this very trust that would become the weapon used against him. For all his control, there was one thing Marcus couldn't manage: his dark, unforgivable secret. And when Sophia uncovered it, it would seal his fate, and hers, in ways that neither could have ever imagined. From the very beginning, there were small, almost imperceptible signs that something wasn't quite right. Marcus was always present in body but often absent in mind. His gaze would drift, his attention wandering, as though there was a world he was part of, one that Sophia couldn't quite reach. He would spend hours at the office, immersed in his work, leaving Sophia to wonder if she had become just another piece of his carefully crafted life. At times, she'd try to breach the distance, make small talk, ask about his day, but his responses were always brief, his focus never fully on her. When they were together, he seemed distant, a man of few words, not one to share what was on his mind. The silence between them grew, but in the back of her mind, Sophia pushed it away. After all, Marcus had given her everything she had ever dreamed of. The wealth, the mansion, the power, it all seemed to be worth the emotional cost. Maybe this was just what it took to live in his world. But despite the fleeting moments of unease, Sophia never questioned him. She didn't want to. There were too many things she had been told, too many promises made for her to let the minor inconsistencies bother her. Not yet. Yet, even when the doubts crept in, she ignored them. She had her vision of the life she wanted to build, and Marcus was central to that. The future seemed bright, a world filled with opportunity, and she was determined to make it work. But deep down, something about Marcus's coldness and emotional absence seemed like an impenetrable wall, a barrier she had no idea how to cross. The wedding night arrived, a night that should have been the culmination of all their dreams. The dress, the ceremony, the guests, the promises. Everything was supposed to fall into place. Yet as Sophia stood beside Marcus, the weight of the evening felt heavier than it should have. There was a disquiet that she couldn't shake, a sense that things weren't as they seemed. As the night unfolded, the dream began to unravel. The magic of their wedding day was quickly overshadowed by Marcus's coldness. His words, which were supposed to be filled with love and affection, were sparse and distant. He barely spoke to her, instead retreating into himself as the night progressed. The warmth she had anticipated wasn't there, and the man who had promised to cherish her seemed to have disappeared behind a wall of indifference. The chemistry, the excitement of the evening, was gone, replaced by an overwhelming emptiness. The moments that should have felt intimate and full of joy felt awkward and foreign. Sophia tried to push aside the discomfort that was growing within her. She told herself that it was just nerves, that maybe Marcus was stressed by the wedding, by everything that had happened that day. After all, he was a man used to being in control, and this grand spectacle must have weighed heavily on him. But as the evening wore on, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the coldness in his eyes, the lack of interest in her presence. It wasn't what she had imagined. It wasn't what she had dreamed of. As the evening grew late, the tension between them still thick, Sophia tried to break through, to create a moment of closeness, a moment of warmth. She had imagined this night for so long, building it up in her mind to be the moment that solidified their life together. But as the night wore on, she found herself alone in the silence, surrounded by the weight of her confusion. In an attempt to feel the intimacy she so desperately craved, she reached out to Marcus, wanting to be close to the man she had married. But what happened next would shatter everything she had believed. As she turned to face him, expecting a moment of connection, she saw something that made her heart drop, something so disturbing, so shocking, that she couldn't look away. It wasn't just a physical reaction, it was a gut-wrenching realization that the man she had married was not who she thought he was. His body, so perfect in its presentation, now seemed foreign to her. A secret that had been hidden, carefully tucked away, was now laid bare before her eyes. Sophia's mind raced, trying to process the sight in front of her. She had always trusted Marcus, believed in the promises he had made, but this was something that she could never have imagined. She had always believed that their marriage would be the beginning of a fairy tale, but now she saw the man she married in a completely different light. The truth, once discovered, could never be unseen. She stood there in disbelief, her world collapsing around her as the enormity of the situation hit her all at once. Instead of an apology, instead of any attempt to explain, Marcus's reaction was chilling. He didn't flinch, didn't move to comfort her or offer any justification for what she had just witnessed. Instead, he stood still, his expression unreadable, as if this moment meant nothing to him. His cold indifference sent a wave of shock through Sophia, leaving her breathless in the face of his emotional detachment. The man who had promised her love and devotion was standing before her, distant and unmoved by the devastation she was feeling. Marcus's response was almost mechanical, no anger, no embarrassment, no regret. It was as though the revelation didn't matter to him at all. His eyes, once full of charm and warmth, were now flat, emotionless. The silence between them was suffocating, the air thick with the weight of what had just transpired. Sophia tried to speak, to make sense of the chaos that was swirling inside her, but the words caught in her throat. What had she truly married? The man she had believed to be her partner, her soulmate, was a stranger in every sense. The mask he had worn for so long, the persona he had crafted to deceive her, had fallen away. What was left in its place was something unrecognizable. The connection she had once felt for him began to dissolve, replaced by a growing horror and confusion. And yet, Marcus remained eerily calm, as though nothing had changed. The man who had promised her a life of bliss, a love that would last forever, was standing before her, the truth of his dark secret now exposed, and he didn't seem to care at all. Everything Sophia had known about him, about their relationship, seemed like a lie. What was real? What had she truly signed up for? The man who had once seemed so perfect, so desirable, was now a figure that filled her with dread, and yet, she could not escape him. Her heart raced, her mind struggled to process the betrayal that had just unfolded before her. She had been deceived in a way that went beyond anything she had ever imagined. This wasn't just about a man and his secrets, it was about a life built on false promises, a life that Sophia would have to confront in a way she was not prepared for. Sophia stood frozen, her mind racing, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined that the man she had pledged her life to could become the very thing she feared most. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to run, to escape, but she couldn't move. The silence between them felt suffocating, like the very air in the room had thickened with tension. Her eyes searched Marcus's, hoping to find some sign of remorse, some flicker of humanity, but what she saw was far more terrifying than she had ever anticipated. His face, once charming and alluring, was now a mask of cold indifference. The warmth she had once seen in him was gone, replaced by a chilling emptiness. He didn't even blink as Sophia's breath caught in her throat, her hands trembling, struggling to process the horror that had just been revealed. She tried to find her voice, but words failed her. How had she gotten here? How had the dream she had fought so hard to create turned into a nightmare so unimaginable? The room felt smaller now, suffocatingly so, as if the walls themselves were closing in. The light from the chandelier above cast shadows across Marcus's face, accentuating the harshness in his expression. The man she had loved, her husband, was standing before her, but this man was not the same. He was something else entirely. The promise of safety she had once felt, the hope that this would be her forever, was now a distant memory. In its place was fear, a fear that gripped her and refused to let go. Sophia, in disbelief, spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Why? Why are you doing this? What happened to us? But her words were met with nothing but silence. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, his gaze remained steady, his eyes cold, distant, as if she were nothing more than a passing inconvenience. Then, in a voice so detached it sent a shiver down her spine, Marcus spoke. His words were simple, yet their weight was devastating. Feed her to the dogs. The command, issued with such calm precision, was as though he had spoken of something trivial, like ordering a meal or making a business decision. The casualness of it was horrifying. Sophia's blood ran cold as the meaning behind his words sank in, each syllable hitting her like a slap to the face. She had crossed a line, one that no one, not even the bravest, dared to cross. In that moment, everything changed. The love she had once felt for him, the admiration, the trust, crumbled into nothing. It was replaced by a deep, consuming fear, a realization that she was no longer in control of her own fate. She had married a man who had the power to destroy her without a second thought, a man who saw life and death as mere transactions. Her discovery of his dark secret had awakened something inside him, something terrifying, and now she was facing the consequence of daring to expose the truth. Sophia's heart raced as the coldness of Marcus's command echoed in her mind. She couldn't understand how it had come to this. This wasn't the man she had married, the man she had believed in. This was a stranger, someone capable of cruelty so calculated, it sent a chill through her soul. She had unknowingly walked into a trap, and now, the very life she had built, the dream she had envisioned, was slipping through her fingers. His words were clear, but the impact of them was crushing. There was no anger in his voice, no fury. He simply spoke as if her life, her fate, was nothing more than a mere inconvenience. A tool to be disposed of when no longer needed. The realization hit her like a wave, she had made a fatal mistake. She had trusted the wrong man. And now, she was going to pay the price. As the minutes passed, each one felt like an eternity. The terror inside Sophia grew, but so did her resolve. She could hear the sound of footsteps echoing through the mansion, the sharp clicks of the locks being undone, her heart pounded in response to the growing certainty that escape was slipping farther out of her reach. Every second felt more suffocating than the last. She was trapped, cornered, with no way out. Desperation gripped her, but amid the chaos and fear, an idea sparked in her mind, a final attempt, the only one she had left. It was a long shot, a fleeting hope that the world might hear her, that someone might believe her before it was too late. Her trembling fingers brushed over her phone, and with a trembling breath, she pressed the button to go live on Instagram. She didn't know if anyone would even be watching, but she had to try. This was her last chance. As the feed flickered to life, she could barely steady her shaking hands. The room around her felt like it was closing in, and her words caught in her throat as she fought to steady her breathing. "Please, someone help me," she whispered into the camera, her voice trembling with fear. "They're going to kill me. Please. I don't know what's happening." Her eyes darted around the room, the weight of Marcus's presence like a stone pressing down on her chest. He was just out of frame, but his looming presence was undeniable. Her fear was palpable, the camera capturing every raw moment of terror. Sophia's face was pale, her eyes wide with panic. As she spoke, she made one last attempt to reach out to anyone, her followers, her friends, anyone who could make sense of what was happening. Sophia's words were jumbled, desperate, but the message was clear: she was in danger, and no one, was coming to her rescue. She had crossed a line, and Marcus had made it clear that there was no way out. He had stripped away any sense of security she had, leaving her exposed, alone, and helpless. Unknown to her, a handful of followers had begun to tune in, each one watching, confused by the unexpected broadcast. Most dismissed it as another frantic post from a troubled influencer, thinking it was just another moment of drama, a call for attention. But something about her voice, faint, shaky, yet laced with fear, compelled a few to stop scrolling and pay closer attention. These few saw the unease in her eyes, the depth of her panic, and for a moment, they wondered if this was something more than a staged performance. Among them was Janelle, a casual follower who had seen Sophia's posts before. She had admired Sophia's lifestyle, the way she portrayed her life as a fairy tale. But now, as she watched Sophia's tearful plea on the screen, Janelle's gut twisted with something deeper. This was no scripted stunt, this was real. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of the incoherent words coming through the feed. Janelle quickly screenshotted the video, trying to figure out what she had just witnessed. She called a friend to ask if they recognized the mansion in the background, but the more she looked, the more she realized something was horribly wrong. The video was shaky, the words blurred with panic, but the unmistakable fear in Sophia's eyes made it clear that something sinister was unfolding. Janelle, unable to ignore the gut feeling that this was serious, sent the footage to a few people she knew and immediately contacted the authorities. But by the time the police were alerted, the damage had already been done. Sophia's time was running out, and the world outside her screen was too far removed from the nightmare unfolding in that mansion. What happened next would leave the authorities scrambling, too little, too late. As the feed ended abruptly, the screen went black, leaving only a lingering sense of dread in the air. Sophia's last words echoed in the minds of those who had seen her plea. Would anyone believe her? Would anyone care? The room she was in went silent once more, but now, that silence was filled with the horrifying realization that Marcus's hold over her had been complete. The authorities would find nothing until it was far too late, and the nightmare she had lived through would forever alter the way the world looked at Marcus Blackwood. The few who had seen her cry for help knew that something terrible had just occurred, but the truth would be obscured by the time the police arrived. No one, not even the authorities, could comprehend the nightmare that had been unfolding within the walls of Marcus's estate. A life that had seemed perfect was now reduced to a web of lies, deception, and a chilling murder that had barely begun to be understood. The authorities arrived at the mansion with swift urgency, their footsteps echoing through the grand hallways that had once been a symbol of wealth and power. But by the time they reached the estate, Marcus Blackwood had already vanished into the shadows, his empire crumbling beneath him. The mansion, which had been a fortress of fear, now stood as a hollow shell of its former self, with every corner hiding a dark truth that was just beginning to come to light. As the investigation unfolded, the officers combed through every inch of the property, uncovering the remnants of Marcus's twisted control over his world. The elaborate facade of wealth and sophistication had masked a far more terrifying reality, one that only a few knew about, and none of them had lived to tell the tale. The police found evidence that linked Marcus to a string of disappearances, not just of his wives, but of countless others who had crossed him in his ruthless climb to power. His wealth, built on a foundation of blood and fear, had shielded him for so long, but now it was all falling apart. Yet, despite the horrors uncovered, there was a chilling sense of uncertainty. The full extent of Marcus's dark deeds was still unknown. The deeper the authorities dug, the more they realized that they had only scratched the surface. How much had he truly hidden? How many more secrets did this man, who had built an empire based on terror, possess? Was he truly gone, or was he already plotting his next move from the shadows? The world would never know the complete truth, and that uncertainty would hang over the investigation like a dark cloud. Sophia's life had been stolen from her in the most brutal way. The woman who had once dreamed of love, security, and a future by Marcus's side had been silenced forever. Her last moments, broadcast to the world, were the only testimony to the horror she endured in the final moments of her life. She had reached out, desperately trying to make someone, anyone, hear her cries for help. But no one could save her in time. The agony and fear she experienced in those moments were now etched into the fabric of her legacy, a reminder of the terrible price she paid for discovering Marcus's secret. The authorities, once they pieced together the fragments of her story, were left to grapple with the truth of what happened behind the closed doors of Marcus Blackwood's estate. But for Sophia, there would be no justice. Her tragic end marked the final act in a life filled with lies, manipulation, and unimaginable cruelty. Her dreams, her hopes for a future, had been crushed by the very man she had trusted the most. And yet, in the aftermath of her death, the world couldn't forget her. The Instagram live feed, her final attempt to speak out, would haunt those who saw it. The woman they had admired, the life she had projected, now seemed like a distant memory, a life that had been brutally stolen away. Her legacy, forever intertwined with the horrors of Marcus's world, would live on in the memories of those who had witnessed her final moments. Sophia's death was not the end of the story, but rather the beginning of the unraveling of an empire built on fear and deception. The investigation into Marcus Blackwood's life and crimes would continue, but it would never bring back the woman whose voice had been silenced too soon. And as the truth slowly came to light, it became clear that while Marcus's empire might have fallen, the horrors he left behind would continue to ripple through the world, leaving scars that would never fade. What do you think? Was Marcus a monster from the very beginning, or did Sophia unknowingly step into a situation far worse than she could have ever imagined? Could she have seen the signs, or was she truly blinded by the promises of love and security? What would you have done if you were in her shoes, faced with the truth too late, with no way to turn back? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Share your thoughts, and let's have a real discussion about what happened, what could have been done, and the devastating consequences of trusting the wrong person. If this story shook you, left you questioning what you would have done in Sophia's place, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We've got more chilling true crime stories coming your way, stories that expose the darkness hiding behind polished facades. Stay tuned for the next episode, because in a world where power, obsession, and deception collide, there's always another story waiting to be told. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode, and join us as we continue to explore the most shocking, heart-wrenching, and perplexing true crime cases. Thank you for being part of this journey, because, in the end, understanding these stories is not just about curiosity, it's about shedding light on the truth and honoring the victims who were silenced too soon.